All right, Marcy. Do you know what reverse churning is?
I'm assuming it doesn't have to do with backwards butter.
I was trying to think of something clever, and I got stuck on, like your stomach churning. So I was trying to work. But then when I mentioned it to Marcy, her first thing was, well, isn't that how you turn butter into milk? Which is the joke to go for. So we are going to talk a little bit about reverse churning.
How it's not backwards butter.
It doesn't have anything to do with butter.
Or milk.
And I was familiar with churning, and so, reverse churning's intuitive, that I understand what it is. And I was aware of the problem, but I didn't realize that they actually had a label for it. And there was an article recently. I'm Mark McKay.
And I'm Marcy McKay.
And welcome to Sage Smart Solutions. Please join us weekly to learn new and exciting ways to protect your assets and retire tax-free and avoid reverse churning and regular churning. I
Explain.
looked at the article, and it was actually, this is with Waddell & Reed. When Marcy and I were first married in Austin, Texas, I went to work for Waddell & Reed.
In 1990?
In old school. I think they had a term product. They kind of embodied the buy term and invest the different strategy. So we would go out and sell these mutual funds and put a term rider. If you'd want us to show you how that term policy compares to the whole life policy that we use on a regular basis, whereas the term policy we pray every day we don't have to use because it's on Marcy. But but the whole policy you don't have to die to get a benefit from. So I digress. I digress. We're going to talk about reverse churning. And Waddell & Reed, who is no longer Waddell & Reed, I didn't realize they sold a couple of years ago. But they paid I think it was like a $776,000 fine for this activity, which I'd love to see what the SEC spent on going after them, the number of attorneys. And
you said Waddell & Reed had to pay how much for reverse churning?
Their settlement was $776,000. We'll get into it a little bit exactly. Okay. So it was a lot, but it was it was a drop in the bucket, and it was really kind of this one branch of them. But so what is churning? Let's look at this. Churning is probably not as commonly known as it used to be. But it used to be if you wanted to go buy a stock.
Okay. Churn and burn. Yeah. To keep
churning.
Okay.
If you wanted stocks, you would go to a Merrill Lynch or a Kidder Peabody or Dean Witter, and you had to pay basically whatever they said you had to pay, because you didn't have access to the internet.
Right.
Or before that you traded online. On your phone.
Right. You had to do it through them.
Before that it was brokers. If you wanted to know what the stock price was, you had to call your broker and ask him.
Okay.
So churning would be, oh, Mr. Smith, we need to go ahead and take the profit on AT&T. 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, Mr. Smith, we want to go ahead and capture that dividend on AT&T. Let's buy it back.
Right.
And so because they charge.
They get fees.
It got regulated.
Right.
They get commissions.
Right.
And so the more trades they make,
got it.
Whether it's in your best interest or not, that's trading. And it sounds like, they wouldn't do that. And it's less of a problem due to transparency and competition.
Right.
Than it was back. But when I worked for Merrill Lynch in a big brokerage house. And this is kind of right when everything was getting digitized, so a lot of it was still pretty old school, and I'm going to sound like the guy who had to walk uphill in the snow both ways. But they had a big stack of paper. Somebody every morning was going to a dot matrix printer, putting out these reports and putting them. It was like this, that nasty computer paper, and you would go through and you could say, okay, Bob Smith, who is a broker, has $72 million in assets under management, and his velocity ratio, this is something that they tracked, was 1.24. So what that means is that it's great that Bob has $72 million in assets in his client accounts, but how much is he making Mother Merrill on that money? How often is he trading? And it kind of works both ways. If
is velocity kind of churning?
It was how much velocity is in how much activity is in that account. And if the number got too high, the compliance officer would come having a talk with you. the number got too low, the branch manager would come and have a talk to you. And he didn't say, you know what, you're being really efficient with your clients' accounts. He's like, get that velocity ratio up. So what they did and what the industry really started moving towards, really about the time that this is all the late 90s, the early 2000s, but they realized that commission strategy was a dying strategy. And so they wanted everything in what they call these wrap accounts. And what that means is they wrap a fee around it. So you've got your AT&T and your water supply corp bond, your muni bonds, and your Apple stock and your IBM stock or whatever it may be in this account. Well, they would just say, listen, we'll let you, we'll trade it for you. We'll get a professional to manage this account. We'll charge you 2% a year. So on $1 million, that was $20,000 a year you're paying to someone to manage the account. Well, reverse churning, which is what they've been accused of, is you put somebody's assets in the account, you're charging them 2% a year for active management. And if you don't trade, if they've got a good portfolio, and study after study after study has shown that active management does not really bring anything to the table. It doesn't reduce your risk and it doesn't increase your reward. So, what are you really paying for? But, in some of these cases, and I've run across this on a personal basis, it's a little bit different what I dealt with, but you've got these big accounts that have these fees on them. It can be a 1% or 1.5%, and usually the more money you have, the lower, things are cheaper for rich people. But they had all these accounts that were being charged these fees, but they weren't really trading. They weren't doing active management.
Right.
And that wasn't really where the issue is per se. It was that they had these systems in place that if you had a whole bunch of stocks and cash and bonds that really weren't, you hadn't traded them, maybe you weren't a good fit for this. Oh, this is the other thing that I wanted to kind of make fun of. I don't want to poke a stick at Waddell and Reed, but Wall Street loves these little catchphrase names. But this is one of the worst ones I've seen in a while. This product that Waddell and Reed had, because they wanted, they love their acronyms, but they call them the wrap account. They want to, bring it. Oh, we're giving you Bob Smith, who outperformed Wall Street 20. He's now providing, a separately managed account just for you. But their program was called Maplitude. So I don't know if you can see it over here, but no, I'm sorry, it's even worse than that. Maplatitude was their program. So I'm sure somebody got a promotion for coming up with this great acronym and this great plan. But the problem was they had these systems in place. But it was like, if you have too much cash in your account, why are you going to pay a fee to actively manage it? If you have fewer than 4 trades over the past calendar year, we're going to recommend that you go to just a commission model. Because essentially, if you didn't do anything, you could have it just sitting there and you wouldn't have to pay any fees for the year. So,
right.
So that
latitude.
That was really where they got in trouble, is that their system, their software had found 737 instances that said, oh, you should reach out to these people and tell them that they should go from my platitude account to just your basic brokerage account, where it sits there, and if they want to make a trade, we charge a commission. Other than that, we're not really bringing a lot of value, so why are we charging a fee other than our custodial account, which I'm sure they're... And the other thing is that these companies all make money on these money market funds. So if they're kind of double dipping on some of this stuff.
That's what I was about to say.
But basically, they didn't tell these people to move the accounts, and
they just did it?
No. If they didn't do anything.
Okay.
And so if those people had moved those accounts, it would have saved them about $500,000. So that was where the basis of that fine was on that just the extra fees they charge, and then there was some punitive damage.
So I
that
get it.
sort
The
of
churning
thing. So
is moving it back and forth, and this was doing nothing.
this is charging somebody a fee without really providing the
Right.
service. They're just not getting. And where I've seen this, and this is I was just curious. This is just from Investopedia, which is kind of like Wikipedia for investment terms. But if you just type in churning, this they've got a nice article, and actually they talk more about reverse churning than I would have thought. But the key here is, and this goes back to our last video about dementia and inflation.
Right.
Because this is where it happens. This is where I have run into a situation like this. I've been sitting there, and it was with a loved one's account that somebody asked me to be a power of attorney on and give some advice, and we're looking at it. And this is a little bit different, but they had like $800,000 over here in these mutual funds. That when you have that much, the funds get more efficient, and so you don't have to pay fees going into them. You don't have as many fees built into them. But then I also saw in a different account, she had $300,000 or $400,000 of what we call C shares, which is kind of the most expensive way to own a mutual fund. And I just I got a little angry at that point. And I was just like, listen, clearly you've established some break points over here on this bucket, but she's paying, that's $4,000 a year right there for nothing.
Yeah.
It's if you just change them over here to the A shares that she already owned. Anyway, it just goes to show that when you're dealing with these things, you have to stay on top of it, especially when you're dealing with these speculative accounts like stock markets and mutual funds and ETFs.
You can get charged for things you didn't even realize you were being charged
and
for.
It happens all the time.
Because it's an easy way for them to make money.
I don't think it's quite as bad as it used to be due to competition and people have access to their accounts and things like that. But on the flip side, it's also so complicated, and the regulators say, you've got to give these people these 2 terabytes of information and you give it to them, and great, but they read none of it. So
Right.
it's counterproductive. Anyway, if you would like to learn some strategies that take reverse churning and regular churning off the table, watch our Masterclass. There's a link below, and then there's a link to schedule a 30-minute strategy session. We can put together a plan for you. If nothing else, you will learn about a new strategy you didn't know before. See how it works or doesn't work in your life. So watch the Masterclass, like and subscribe to this video, please. Schedule your strategy session today.
And learn more. Take control of your family's financial future.
Prevent reverse churning. Have a great week.